This is Johnny and Jose with Tiger Bomb MMA, and we'll be going over UFC on ESPN 22, Whittaker versus Gastelum, going over the entire card, giving you our thoughts and predictions, possible prop bets. But before we start, I'd like to give a shout out to Cornbread 402. I had a sign made of our logo, and he does miracles with wood. He did a really great job. I'm really impressed with it. It was worth the money. Go check him out on Instagram if you have a chance. Again, Cornbread402. Go to our Instagram page at Tiger Bomb MMA to look at the work that he did. If you guys are interested, check him out. He ships. He's not paying me to say this shit. I'm just really, really, really happy with what work he did. But yeah, go check him out. To begin the card, we've got a fight between Andre Arlovski and Chase Sherman at heavyweight. A very interesting matchup because this was going to be Parker Porter versus Chase Sherman, but he pulled out. I'm not sure why. But Andre Arlovski coming in here versus Chase Sherman. This is for sure Chase Sherman's biggest fight. And Chase Sherman's actually been on a pretty good run. He's on a 4-fight knockout streak and a 4-fight winning streak. As for Arlovski, his last fight was a submission loss to Tom Aspinall, who honestly, he might be one of the top prospects. Well, of course he is, but I think he might be one of the top guys in the division that will be fighting for a championship down the line. Currently, Arlovski is 42 years old. The comeback on Chase Sherman, he's 31. And I find this one to be rather fascinating. I think this matchup will really show how developed Chase Sherman is at this point in his career. I mumbled. But we know what Arlovski's been up to recently. He's kind of slowed it down a bit. He's protecting his chin. His chin has actually looked really solid compared to what a couple years ago, almost a decade ago, when Sergey Karatanov was knocking him out against the cage and Brett Rogers was knocking him out. So his new slowed down style is really helping him a bit in not getting knocked out. He's kind of seeing things a little bit more. So yeah, I'm fascinated by this one. I personally think Chase Sherman is taking on an opponent that's just too experienced. It's literally he has double the wins. He's 30-20 and 15-6 for Chase Sherman. Let's take a look at the odds. Let's see here. Let's see if they even have them out. Yeah, I guess no odds out available yet. I will be interested in seeing the odds. Hopefully, Arlovski is a underdog because I do have him winning this one. I think he'll win either by a knockout or a decision. Personally, the way I see this fight going is that Chase Sherman, he really gets aggressive sometimes. His striking is pretty solid. He mixes in kicks and elbows and everything in between. But Arlovski, he does have power in those hands still at that age. So I can see Chase Sherman kind of chasing Arlovski and then Arlovski just kind of blasting him and knocking him out because Chase Sherman's been knocked out multiple times. I'll keep it short at this point. Arlovski, I think he'll win this one by second round knockout.
I was just taking a look at the stats. I think the weigh-ins are going to be very interesting in this one because I've noticed that Arlovski against guys who are smaller than him, he tends to bully in the cage. He won't really back up. He has really good. You know what? You brought up a good point. He has improved over the last decade and a half. Since he's been in the UFC. He has a lot better head movement, footwork now than he did then. Even though he isn't as spry on his feet as he used to be, but his chin has also improved. Against guys like Jair or what's his name, Stipe. Those are some of the heaviest hitters. And even again, I think he lost against Ngannou as well at some point.
Yeah, he got crushed by Ngannou.
Yeah, he got, and there he is. Yeah,
Was it
yeah.
like
Well,
2018 maybe or what? I know it was in
yeah,
Colorado. I just can't
yeah.
remember what year.
The stretch from 2016 to 17 was his toughest stretch. He got murdered by Stipe, Overeem, Barnett, Ngannou, even Ty. I guess. Well, I guess he didn't get murdered by Tybura, but he lost to Tybura.
Yeah,
That was
he got smothered. I remember that. I was in a gas stop, like on a road trip, and then I stopped at a gas stop and I saw him just getting laid on. I'm like, oh, fucking Arlovski.
yeah. The last two times he got murdered were by was in 30 seconds or less than 30 seconds by Jair, and then less than a round and a half by Aspinall. Chase Sherman, I don't know. I mean, it says that he's bigger than Overeem on this thing, but there's taller, and then there's like, physically, more imposing. And looking at Arlovski, I didn't think he was such a big guy until what do you call it? Until I saw him against Tanner Boser, and I thought Tanner Boser was a fairly big guy. But then when I saw them at the weigh-in, I was like, holy shit, Tanner Boser's almost like a light heavyweight at this point, who just doesn't want to, shrink down to light. He likes his, he likes his ribs and spaghetti or whatever the hell Tanner Boser eats.
Probably poutine.
Possum. I don't know what the hell they eat. But yeah, he was like, really a lot bigger than Tanner Boser. And it showed in the fight. Tanner Boser was very hesitant to, do anything other than pepper him with shots. He should have brought the salt. He just peppered him anyway. Tom Aspinall was another. Yeah, I thought this guy was going to go out there and murder him, which he did. Jay Sherman, the Vanilla Gorilla. That's what I used to call him, Brock Lesnar. So it's kind of odd to see that nickname for Chase Sherman. Well, here's the thing: if Chase Sherman thinks he's Francis Ngannou and is just going to come in here and drop Andre in the first round, he has nothing coming, because Andre, he is a very savvy veteran. He is, at this point, for lack of a better word, he is the journeyman, to beat in the heavyweight division. He just tends to stifle all these up and comers and guys with the hype train behind them. Unless the hype train, is maybe coming, a little bit too fast on the tracks for him, like Aspinall and Jair. So if Chase, thinks just a single punch is going to bring him down, he's got something coming. Andre can box. And I don't know if Chase is going to be the guy to take him down and control him on the ground or against the cage and such, because that's what Andre does. That's kind of his specialty now as he's gotten older. He can't just dance around in the middle of the octagon and he's not fighting Tim Sylvia here. 15 years ago. So it's yeah, this is a hard one. And I'm dancing around the fact that I want to say Andrei Arlovski, but yeah, Chase Sherman. I don't know. You know what? I'm going to take the over. I'm not going to take a side here. I think this is going to go at least a round and a half, but it's all dependent on, screw it. I'm going to go with Andrei Arlovski and the over, because I don't think Andrei's going to have enough. I think Andrei's going to control the fight, but I don't think Andrei's going to have enough to maybe submit him or knock him out. I think Jonathan, hopefully he isn't underestimating Arlovski either. But I don't think Jonathan's going to have the type of, what's the word?
Jonathan.
Yeah, Jonathan Chase Sherman. That's his name.
That's his name? I thought it was just Chase Sherman.
Wait, what did I said? John? Yeah, that's what.
Who's Jonathan? I'm like, what are you talking
about? Yeah, I think he's okay, Jonathan. Yeah, that's what we're gonna call him, Jonathan. I don't think he has the type of fight management skills that Arlovski has. So I don't think he has, the kind of I don't know how else to put it, but he doesn't have the cat herder wrangling skills. Cat herder wrangling. I don't know if that's the right word.
He can't cut off the cage, like
yeah, exactly. It's like Arlovski's a pro at that. If he sees the opportunity to control the cage, control where where the fight's going, he's going to do it. And I think Chase Jonathan is going to come out with bombs in the first round, and then Arlovski's just going to control the fight from there. I think he's going to be able to survive that. So I'll go with Arlovski and the over on this one.
Our next matchup at strawweight, we've got the return of Jessica Penne versus newcomer Lupita Godinez. Screwed that one up. Lupita. She's 5-0 coming in against the veteran in Penne. Her last three fights have been losses against Joanna Jędrzejczyk, Jessica Andrade, and Danielle Taylor. We touched on this a couple weeks ago because I think this one got postponed due to COVID. And it did give Lupita a little bit more time because she came in on short notice to fight Jessica Penne. And, it gave her a little bit more time to prepare. And I'll be quick. We kind of went over this last time. Jessica Penne's been away for too long on a suspension. She was doing odd jobs like Uber driving, and I think she had a OnlyFans at one point. She's 38 years old. At this point in time, I just don't see her being the elite fighter that she once was. If she was, hell, even 3 or 4 years younger, I think she would run through Lupita because Lupita, she's a Mexican fighter that trains in Canada. She's very scrappy. She fights the way she was raised. She's very Mexican as a fighter. I think she has enough to just beat up Jessica Penne. I will say though, what I did find interesting watching tape with Lupita is that she does get busted up a bit. Like her nose starts to bleed, and if you look at the screen right now, Jessica Penne bleeds quite a bit. She's gotten punched in the face numerous times. There is a possibility that Jessica Penne can just kind of grapple fuck her on the ground because she is a jiu-jitsu black belt. She has fought the best of the best on the ground. It's just that I don't know. I can't trust her coming back after that long of a layoff. Currently, the odds are, depending on what side, I'll go with Bovada, but minus 325 for Godinez and plus 250 for Penne. I wouldn't touch this at those odds, but for sure, I think this goes over. I think Penne is still pretty tough. I don't think she'll get knocked out. I don't think Lupita has the raw power to knock her out. I think this will be a really boring fight. To be honest, I think there's going to be a lot of clinching up against the cage and spurts from Lupita just kind of attacking that will win her the rounds. I will say go Dinas by decision and the over.
Yeah, this is one. I was like, I'm having deja vu. I was like, didn't she already fight, or didn't? So I remember. Yeah, I was like, strange.
Yeah,
Because
postponed.
yeah, Lupita looks a little bit like what's her name? She looks like a Mexican version of. So imagine her with blonde hair. She looks like Felice Herrig. Actually, she looks
Oh,
like a Lupita Herrig Godinez. Um, yeah, she looks. I was like, that's the other reason I had deja vu. I was like, wait, why does Felice Herrig dye her hair? Anyway, so yeah, this is not something that you should probably take fart of. Part of even the even though the odds are somewhat tempting to put in a parlay, this is definitely going to be a parlay. This is definitely going to flip your par flip your parlay, bend it over, and take advantage of it. Um, yeah, just with most low-level women's fights, I'd say the over is probably the better bet if you have to place a bet. But if you do, there are better bets on this card. This is not unless you like living on the edge and do a separate, like $1 parlay, $1 Hail Mary with uh, a 12 what is it 12 team parlay on this card, and I say go for it. Take your pick, but I'm staying away from either side and just going with the over, like every other low level women's fight.
speaking of low level women's fight, we've got a fight at bantamweight between Zarah Farin and Josaini Nunes. It was so bad that I couldn't even find a proper picture for Josie to put on here. Uh, so yeah, just like the tap. I think it's like the tapology page. I couldn't find anything on her. I've seen some highlights of her, and I don't know, man. I'll go with the odds right now. The odds are currently plus 115 for Farron, and Nunes is up minus 140. I'm staying away from this one completely because it's a coin flip, in my opinion. Zarah, her last two losses were at featherweight. She lost to Felicia Spencer by knockout. And here's where I'm like, I'm staying the hell away from this one. I don't care how possible Nunes could be, how shitty she can be on the ground. Zarah lost to Megan Anderson by triangle choke. And if you get submitted by Megan Anderson, that is not a good look. I don't care how much better she can be than Nunes. I'm not touching this one. I will go with Nunes to win by knockout. She is a pretty aggressive fighter. She's pretty wild, like a bit of a tornado in there, but a very sloppy tornado. Like you'll look at it and be like, huh, I can just step to the side and tornado will pass me. I'll go with Nunes to win this one. I wouldn't be surprised if Zarah just takes her down because I've seen her get taken down very easily and controlled. I'll go with Nunes. I'll stay away from this one. Possibly do the under. I don't care. I'm staying away from this one, but I got Nunes by first round knockout.
Jesus, she lost to Megan Anderson and Felicia Spencer on the ground. That doesn't look good. And while this isn't the Nunes that's going to be the champ in two divisions for the foreseeable future, I think she has enough to take out Fern, Zarah Infinite Fern. Yeah, I don't really have much to say on this one, other than Fern is pretty old at 34 years old in this division, so she's way over the hill. I mean, the only mark on Josiane's record is against Talia Santos, and if you've seen Talia Santos' last fight or last few fights, she's beginning to bring it. She may have maybe left her bags at the supermarket before, but she is now bringing them to the fight. I don't know if that made any sense. Maybe I'll need to rework my jokes in the future. But that's really not bad. This is Fern's first fight in the UFC. This is her intro to the world, so I think she's probably going to be pretty aggressive. As of late, I've noticed a lot of the women fighters are being a little bit more aggressive in their fights versus the guys. I don't know if the guys are just a little bit too lax, or it's the Kevin Holland effect where you lose your goddamn mind and you forget that you're in a fight, and so you just kind of sit there, smile like a jackass, and talk, a bunch of nonsense, trying to be funny and trying to gain attention for all that doesn't really matter if you're not winning. If you're not winning, then you're just an a-hole, in there on your back, in missionary position, getting pounded. Take that however you will. So I'll take Nunes here, and I'll take the over. I don't know if she's going to necessarily come in here and knock her out, but I think she will dominate. And funny enough, her last fight, she actually won in 2 minutes 31 seconds of round number 2. So if you take the so man, if you had
Oh,
taken the under there, holy crap, you would have been shit out of luck, by 2 seconds. So there's always that, man. It's pretty funny. But she is pretty aggressive. Taking the under isn't a bad spot, but it's women's MMA, so I'll just take the side with Nunes here.
our next matchup at middleweight, we've got the introduction to middleweight for Abdul Razak Al Hassan, Judo Thunder, versus Jacob Mamba Malkoun. So Abdul Razak, we know what happened to him. He got accused of some stuff. He was away from the cage for a bit, comes back, and he, honest to God, does not look the same. He was a destroyer 2 years ago, just doing things to guys that are unmentionable, almost like what he was accused of. But God, anyways, he is moving up to middleweight. His last fight, he got stiffened really badly by Chaos Williams, and his fight before that was a very odd fight with Munir Lazez. He got decisioned. He did not look the same, and honest to God, we have not really seen any glimpses of the man of old, the guy who would go in there and just destroy dudes. Knocked out, um, what's his name? Saba Hamasi. He knocked them out twice. Man, it's just that guy was something special. So maybe a move up to middleweight might be the sign of things to come. As for Jacob Malkoun, his last fight was a devastating knockout to Phil Haas. I actually picked him to win because I thought to myself, man, I'm not really too sold on Phil Haas. And unfortunately for Jacob and myself, I didn't actually bet Jacob, but unfortunately for him, he got KO'd in the first round. He got blitzed into oblivion. I know he's a pretty decent striker. I think he's a pro boxer, if I remember correctly, or at least he's had some pro boxing experience, but not a whole ton. The only thing he's got going for him at this point is that he is the younger guy and he has more experience in that weight class. I honest to God, I can't pick either of these guys because I can easily say, hey, Abdul Razak Al Hassan's not going to have a weight cut. He's going to move up in weight. He's going to look better. He's going to knock dudes out. He's going to look like the old guy that he was before. It's just that who the hell knows? Maybe Joseph or Jacob Malcorn is a really good fighter, but he just happened to run into Phil Haas. Currently, the odds are I got to stop doing that. I got to start with the odds. I'm just going into it. The odds are minus 300 for Al Hassan and plus 235 for Malcorn. See, I've bet Al Hassan at those odds before and I got burned. And I've learned my lesson. I'm going to stay away from this one. I might potentially do the under because they've both been knocked out pretty harshly. So maybe it's just a light little tap from either guy can put the other guy down. So I'll do the under. I will pick Al Hassan because it's really hard for me not to go with him because if he goes back to maybe using his grappling and he's just kind of had some growing pains coming back to the UFC, he could be that destroyer that he once was, especially in a new weight class, not having to cut weight. I'll pick him tentatively by knockout. I will say round number two. I would say maybe to be specific, 229 of round number two to go with the under.
There's one thing you have to take into consideration with Al Hassan, and that's that he might have developed a eating disorder. His time away from the UFC, because now he can't make welterweight. It's not that he's deciding to move up in weight; it's the fact that he can't stop eating, and he can't go down in weight now. So that's troublesome. If he doesn't have the same work ethic, cardio, strength training, if his I don't know if his trainers have switched up. He may have some problems at home. He may have marital issues, marital problems. I don't know, man. But something is affecting this guy's ability to make 170 and be in the kind of shape where he was a killer. Moving up in weight, everybody thinks that it's going to be the that they're going to have the Rob Whittaker effect. Didn't happen. Didn't necessarily happen with Jacare. Didn't happen with Weidman. Didn't happen, unfortunately, with
Oh,
Rockhold. He experienced that Polish power. Uh, um, it didn't really translate for Nate Diaz. Didn't really translate for McGregor either. Even though they fought. Um, so it translated for very few guys. Kind of like Dustin Poirier. Um, so going up in weight is not always. And DC, I guess he wasn't really going up in weight as much as he just stopped sucking it in. By having to just skip a few buckets of greasy stuff every now and again to be able to make light heavyweight. Um, yeah, he's now pretty chonky. He's not chunky. He's chonky with an O. Um, and so I don't know, man. I have no faith in Al Hassan. I'm not hopping on that derailment of a train. Nor do I have any faith in Malkoun. So this is a fight where you have two guys that I have no faith in. I don't think either of them are going to have great cardio. I don't think either of them are going to come to win. I think they're both going to just be in there and fight to not lose. So I don't think this is going to be anything. There's going to be zero excitement here. And so I'm just going to take the over here. The odds do not merit betting on Al Hassan, not at those odds. If it was like minus 125 plus 130 ish range, okay, maybe. But yeah, minus 300 for Al Hassan, hell no. That is, I'd rather put that money on Jessica Penne, or rather invest it in her OnlyFans or something.
Well, if you had to pick, who would you go with?
At those odds, I would include Jacob in that $1 Hail Mary parlay.
So you would go with Jacob? Just
Yeah,
let's just say Capper's comparison picks needs a pick. You would go with Jacob.
I would go with Jacob just because of the points that I mentioned of Hassan not being able to make welterweight anymore. This is not the case where he had a stretch of bad luck and decided to go up in weight, like Dustin and Rob. This is just a case where he Kelvin Gastelum himself out of the welterweight division.
It's a good comparison.
Yeah, so I think the value is on Jacob, but realistically, I'd stay away from this. Yeah, I'd sooner bet on Jessica Pena than bet on this one.
Moving on then, a bantamweight battle. We have Tony Gravely versus Anthony El Toro Birchak. And the odds are, this time I didn't forget, plus 250 for Birchak and a minus 300 for Gravely. I don't like these odds at all. There's nothing in here that's
Mm,
screaming out my name like, hey, bet me. But, they're both wrestlers. Anthony Birchak has a chin issue. Gravely, he trains at American Top Team. He's the shorter guy. He's got not necessarily his reach is off by 1 inch, but he has enough reach at a shorter height to kind of make an impact, especially with the jab. Birchak does have some good hands. It's just that he is kind of chinny, and he's just not the best well-rounded guy. There are dudes in the UFC that he can beat for damn sure. It's just that when it comes to like the Tony Gravely's, his last loss was to Brett Johns, who's not a scrub. He got submitted by him in a really good back and forth fight, and his last win was against Geraldo de Freitas. And for Birchak, he lost to his buddy Gustavo Lopez, who a guy who hyped himself up too much. He's not the best fighter in the UFC either, but he got demolished by him. I think Gravely's just going to be this faster guy. He's going to potentially hurt Birchak as long as he doesn't get clipped with an uppercut or anything. I think he'll be able to take him down, control him, and then just pound him out. But I do have Gravely actually to win this one by decision. I think Birchak does have enough to combat some of the wrestling, but overall, I think Gravely's just a stronger, more physical grappler. Even though I did say that Gravely would pound him out, I think he'll pound him out, but not get the stoppage. I think he'll go into a decision. So I got Gravely by decision.
yeah, this isn't. I don't think they're going to be fireworks in this particular matchup. And I think before looking at anything else, I took a look at their ages. And funny thing, I actually thought Anthony Birchak was the younger guy. Gravely just, I don't know, just hasn't aged too well, man. Um, but that being said, I think Birchak is maybe at the point or getting close to the point where he's over the hill in this division. Because in the, I'd say maybe starting at the 155 and working your way down in all those weight classes, anytime a guy gets to be over 30, 32 years old, they're over the hill. Their best days are way behind them. The lighter weight classes are, the young man's game. So I think Tony Gravely has that edge to him. Um, yeah, I think this is going to be a decision in Tony Gravely's favor. Even though Anthony Birchak is part of 10th Planet Tucson Tucson. Yeah, I mean, and he is a little bit bigger than him, but I think the age, he's going to have that extra testosterone, unless Anthony's on that TRT on the down low. I think that's probably what's going to give him the edge in this one, as do 91% of the people on the fight predictions on Tapology agree Gravely's going to win. So, um, yeah, so that confirms my suspicions. Yeah, so let's take Gravely by decision.
Our next matchup at featherweight, we've got Ricardo Ramos versus Bill Senor Perfecto Algeo. and I kind of like this one. I'm very interested to see these two tall, lanky dudes go at it. Currently, we have the odds depending on where you go because I'm checking out Odd Shark right now, and they kind of vary. But it's either a pick 'em at minus 110, or a slight lean towards Ricardo Ramos at minus 138, and a plus 105 for Algeo. And it's a very fascinating matchup because Bill Algeo is coming in with a win over Spike Carlisle. And to be honest with you guys, I do like Spike Carlisle. I actually picked him to win this fight, but I think Spike has a deficiency fighting dudes named Bill that are taller and lankier than him. But his last fight before that was a loss to Ricardo Lamas. He took that fight on short notice. He looked pretty good, but he got out vetted by Ricardo Lamas, and I think that was his retirement fight. There's some really good things about Bill Algeo. His striking's good. His jujitsu's good. He's a tall dude. He's 6 foot tall, a 73.5 inch reach. But he's coming in against a guy who is very dynamic, very fluid on the feet, very creative. His jujitsu's not too bad either. And, he's not a shorter, stumpier guy, which, currently within his last two fights, Algio's 50-50 on those. He beat Spike, but he lost to Ricardo Lamas, another guy who's shorter than him. I do find this fight fascinating. That's a lot of F's because Ricardo Ramos, although I do hold him a little bit higher than Bill Algeo, he did lose to Leon Murphy. He was winning that fight, and then he got taken down and just pounded out. So I can see Bill Algeo finding a way to get him down and landing some ground and pound. So it's very possible. I don't think Bill's going to be able to hurt him as bad as Murphy did. So who the hell knows? Um, Honestly, if this stays on the feet, Ricardo Ramos might be able to eat Bill Algeo alive. It is a bit of a toss up. Currently, Tapology has him ranked 61 for Algeo and 60 for Ramos. It's a very good fight. I have to go with Ramos. I think he'll just be too fast, too fluid, too quick. He'll be able to defend the takedowns, and if they happen to go to the ground, I think he'll have enough to kind of withstand Bill Algeo. So I'll go with Ramos. I'm not too confident in this one because I need to see a little bit more from Bill Algeo. He could be a guy to kind of keep an eye on in this division, especially at that height and just overall stature. It's always nice to see. And his chin's not too bad either. Ricardo Ramos's chin's a little suspect, but I'll go with him to win this one. I think he might be able to hurt Bill Algeo to the body with a spinning technique and then potentially finish him, or at least win rounds hurting Bill Algeo. But I'll go with Ramos to win this one by decision.
Right, yeah, this is this is probably one of the closest fights on the card, I think. And I was trying to uh, just remember how good Spike Carlisle was for a moment until he wasn't. um,
We did
he,
pick up a win in LFL. I'll say that LFL, LFA.
yeah, and so I think the odds for wait, what are the odds for Bill Algeo here?
They were either a pick
Yeah,
'em. Yeah, they're basically a pick 'em, really.
yeah, it's basically a pick 'em. I think they're dead on. Um, I personally think that the the value is on Algeo um, rather than Ramos because Ram. I don't know why, but when I think Ramos, for some reason I think Ricardo Lamas. I don't know why I make that analogy. Whatever, maybe the Ricardo part.
Yeah.
I think I think Lamas. I think he looks like he has that mascara on. The eyeliner.
Oh, yeah.
He has that thing like that actor from The Dark Knight, and
Nestor or something or other? Nestor something?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's like they have super thick eyelashes, and it just looks like they have mascara on all the time. Anyway, that's a creepy vibe I get from that guy. Um, so yeah, so I think whenever I think Ricardo Lamos, I think of I maybe put him up higher on not on the pedestal necessarily, but I rank him higher in my mind just because I make that association for some reason confuse him with Ricardo Lamas. But he's not Ricardo Lamas. This guy lost to Murphy. Anybody losing to somebody named Lerone should not belong in the UFC. And he has, yeah, I mean, if you're from California, you see the name Newsom, especially Journey Newsom, you want to throw up.
That's funny.
Yeah. But he beat him. He didn't beat up the Newsom that that I'd like to see beaten up, but he beat him nonetheless. And he for a bit was almost alternating wins and losses. But I think I think the value here is on Algeo. Yes, he did lose to Lamas, but he lost by decision, though, so it's not like he got completely dominated. But then again, he did beat the Alpha Ginger into not retirement, but he beat him out of the. I guess he beat him so bad that the UFC decided not to keep him. So there's that. Now there is the age, the whole age argument here, and I think at 145 it's maybe a little bit less. It makes it a little bit less of an argument, even though they are 6 years apart. Everything is kind of like spot on with these guys, meaning that they're aside from their height, which actually Algeo has 3 inches of height. It's weird, man. These guys are so evenly matched. I guess really the only advantages each of these guys has, in my opinion, is Algeo has the height advantage, and Ricardo has the youth advantage. So I don't know which to weigh more, other than Ricardo Ramos actually training over at Team Alpha Midget. I think maybe that. I would say that would be the other slight advantage in Ramos's on Ramos's side, the grappling advantage, because Team Alpha Midget, that's one thing they really prepare their guys on, to take them down and bite on their ankles. So it's a hard one. I don't think either guy has what it takes to finish the other one. So I'm leaning slightly toward Ramos and the over on this one.
Our next matchup at lightweight, we've got Violent Bob Ross, Luis Pena versus Alex Munoz.
God, I hate that guy.
Which one?
The furry ginger.
I'll get the odds. The odds currently have it at plus 120 for Munoz and minus 150 for Luis Pena. And I need to ask, I think I know why you hate him. Why do you hate Luis Pena?
His fuzziness freaks me out. But also this guy's a huge letdown, man. He has the arrogance of I don't know, McGregor in there, with the ability of I don't know, I can't he has the arrogance of McGregor in there with the fight IQ of Elevation Kane in there. he just doesn't.
That's perfect. That's a perfect example.
Yeah, he's not. He is nowhere near. I don't think this guy belongs in the UFC. I think he's, a Bellator contender, Bellator contender, waiting to happen. This guy, I don't know, man. I just don't like when guys are that arrogant and are just not that skilled. Because this guy has, how tall is this guy? This guy's 6'3".
Yeah.
Jesus, that's like, John Jones going over to the bantamweight division. It's like you're that tall and you can't control range on these guys. Not only that, he's like in his late 20s, but he looks like he's 40. Like, Jesus, man, get some vitamins or something. I don't know what the hell, but
well, I'm glad you brought all that up because you made a lot of points for me. He's super unreliable. When you mentioned Elevation Kane, is when you're bringing up the fact that he dived for a takedown on Verdum and he got snatched up by guillotine, which is exactly what happened to him against Kama Worthy, a fight that he was arguably on his way to winning, and then he gets snatched up by Kama Worthy, and then he taps out. I think we both had money on him at that time, right?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. So as you mentioned, he's 6'3" in the in the lightweight division. And I have to disagree slightly with you. I do think he belongs in the UFC. It's just that he is a head case sometimes. Like, I don't know what the hell goes on with him. His IQ is quite poor. If he gets proper coaching, I think he can be, I don't want to say a contender, but maybe top 20, top 15 down the line because he has that reach advantage, that height. It's just that he's super unreliable. And honestly, Alex Munoz, he's a pretty goddamn good wrestler. He trains at Team Alpha Male. He he beat the great one, Nick Newell, the one-armed fighter. So that's something. His last loss, which was his last fight, was against Nasrat Haqparast, where frankly he got his ass beat. But something about him getting his ass beat kind of made me think, man, this guy's pretty fucking cool. He took it like a man, like he went after him, right? He was covered in blood, and he said, "Screw it!" Like he looked like he would be willing to die in there, which maybe not. That's just my interpretation of it. I think there might be some value on Munoz. I'll pick him to win just cause, maybe because I'm salty about Luis Pena. But honest to God, Luis Pena could be winning this entire fight pretty easily because Munoz's striking isn't that great, and frankly, Luis Pena's striking is good enough to keep him away. But I think that wrestling, man, for a wrestler, for a guy who has a tattoo of the wrestling logo, the US wrestling logo on him, motherfucker can't really stuff a takedown to save his life. He got kind of pushed around by Matt Frivola and stuff like that. Bringing up the Matt Frivola fight, like he's losing that fight. He's not doing enough. And he gets mad that he loses the fight via split decision. Like, dude, quit your bitching and just get better. So again, Luis Pena could win this fight pretty easily by decision, but I will be, I'm going to go against what people think because right now Tapology has him like 77% of the people have him to win. I'm going to go with Alex Munoz. I think he would have made some adjustments, worked on his striking and striking defense. He will wrestle, so I can see him just grinding out Luis Pena on the ground, and Luis Pena thinking that he did enough on the bottom by maybe landing a couple shots, might potentially even cut Alex Munoz. But I see Alex Munoz winning this one by decision just for the hell of it. I got him to win by a decision.
I have the perfect analogy for Luis Pena. Luis Pena is the Stefan Struve of the lightweight division. Um, so that being said, I am going with Alex Munoz. Whether he wins or not, I'm not putting any skin in this game. But Luis Pena, mark my words, is the Stefan Struve of this division, and I don't think he'll be around much longer.
I
Uh,
disagree. Stefan Struve did beat a world
he's
champion.
um, well, I mean, they might match up. They might bring BJ Penn back and match him up against Luis Pena. So there's always that chance. But yeah, no, man, Luis Pena. Yeah, I think he's garbage, and I'm not. That isn't to say that Alex Munoz is going to be a world beater anytime soon. Yeah, man. I'm hoping Team Alpha Midget pretty. Um, they worked on him, to fill up his to fill in his the holes that he has in his grappling game, especially that you pointed out his takedown defense. I think if they do that, he'll have enough to stuff uh, any attempts by Pena. Yeah, and his size is troublesome until you see that he's not very. I don't know, man. I mean, he should be dominating all these guys at lightweight, but I don't think he'll ever, get into the top 30 in the UFC lightweight division. To be honest, he's a Bellator contender waiting to happen. So yeah, I dislike that guy very, very much. So I'm going to take Munoz and the over. So I don't think there's going to be a finish in this fight.
Our next matchup at lightweight, we've got the debut of Nathan Levy versus Austin Thud Hubbard. The odds are roughly This is from my local casino. It is wow, fascinating. Plus 110 for Levy and minus 137 for Austin Hubbard. I am frankly surprised that they're giving Hubbard a bit of respect when it comes to the odds. Him being the favorite, I can see why, right? For those of you who heard our last podcast, I brought up a story about Austin Hubbard and how I kind of gained some respect for him. I ended up cracking a tooth, being so terrified that Austin Hubbard was going to knock out Marco Madsen, a guy who I max betted. I mean, I put a lot of money that I never put a bet like that big on a guy, and I was kind of stressing out. And the thought of Austin Hubbard knocking him out in the third round, which nearly happened, made me crack one of my teeth. So I've come to respect Austin Hubbard, but his last loss was to Joe Selecki. Joe Selecki just punked him around in that fight. Like he took his back, submitted him standing. So that was concerning. I thought Hubbard was going to put a bit more of a fight. And as I mentioned, I'm a pretty big Austin Hubbard fan ever since he beat Max Roshkov out of the UFC. Oh God, that is one of my favorite things to watch. Just him saying, call it," like I'm done, call it." I mean that maybe I'm an asshole, but I find joy in that for whatever reason. For Nathan Levy, he is 6-0. So currently, Austin Hubbard does have the significant uh, experience advantage. He's 12-5, so he's fought some good guys in the UFC. I mean, some really good guys, but he's lost to them. Davi Ramos, he lost to. He beat Kyle Prepelic. Okay, great. Marco Madsen lost to him, but he beat Max Roshkop. He's out. He quit. He quit on the stool. Doesn't belong. And then he lost to Joe Selecki. So there's a trend here. The only weird trend is that he might have one of those. What's that girl's name with the red hair? I keep forgetting her name.
Ronda Marcos.
Randa Marcos. Yeah, she has a bit of a Randa Marcos thing going, like win loss, win loss. So Thud could be in for a win, especially against a guy who's very, he's not the most experienced, but he is pretty damn good. He's an Israeli guy. He fights out of Las Vegas, out of Syndicate MMA. He has a 1 inch reach advantage, and him being a slight shorter guy, I do like the thought of the jabs coming up and hitting him in the nose. Like I feel like they're more impactful coming from a shorter guy with longer reach. And things going for Levy is that he is a jiu-jitsu black belt, Jew being JEW, as he puts it on his Twitter. He's a kung fu black belt and a karate black belt. So he's no pushover. This could be one of those guys that he's primed to make a good run in the UFC, potentially stay undefeated for a while. But damn, Austin Hubbard has a way of just taking an ass whooping and then coming back. Like before the Joe Selecki fight, I thought, man, this guy, it might be really hard for him to get submitted because Davi Ramos couldn't submit him, and Marco Madsen, being a Greco wrestling silver medalist, couldn't really submit him either. But damn, Joe Selecki kind of whipped his ass a bit. So who knows what will happen in this matchup? It's close for me, honestly, because I can see the hype around Levy. He's not too bad. He can use his wrestling, but third round Austin Hubbard is something to be weary of, man. If he gets to that third round, Austin Hubbard has some really good cardio, and his striking, when he gets off on his striking, like he's pretty solid. I don't think Austin Hubbard's ever going to be like top 10, shit, even top 20, but he is someone I kind of respect just because he can take an ass whooping and come back. He kind of reminds me of a more active, um, Sam Alvey in a way. He'll take that ass whooping. He has a dad bod. Uh, I'll go with Austin Hubbard. I think they might have it right. I think he should be the favorite. He has more experience. Sometimes these really good black belts in multiple disciplines just don't have the overall experience in the fight, and especially in the cage. So I'll go with Austin Hubbard. I think his overall experience is going to get him the decision win. So I'll go with Hubbard to win by decision.
I agree. I don't have too much more to add with what you've already brought up. I think Austin Hubbard has twice as many wins as Nathan has fights. And yes, I was also going to point out that while he might be a black belt in multiple disciplines, putting it all together, he might not have as much he for sure doesn't have as much experience as Austin Hubbard. Austin has several fights in the UFC and alternating wins and losses. I think he is due for a win, but that's isn't so much any sort of um, I forgot the word I was going to bring at superstition or anything. It just has to do with unless Nathan Levy has been working with I don't know, some super high level guys in the UFC or really just experienced MMA guys. I think Austin's fight IQ is going to be higher at this point. And that isn't to say Nathan can't accumulate that by going several rounds with guys in the UFC, but at this point, the slight advantage goes to Austin Hubbard, and I would say maybe the over, but knowing my luck, is probably going to end up in a submission of some sort.
Our next matchup at women's flyweight, we've got Tracy Cortez versus Justine Kish. I like this matchup, and the odds are currently interesting. Minus 210 for Cortez, plus 165 for Justine Kish. And with women's MMA, really anything can happen. Sometimes you can get a girl like Sabina Masso, for example. I actually bet Justine Kish to beat Sabina Masso, and she was doing a pretty goddamn good job. And I was like counting my money, just getting ready to go to the casino to cash out. And then Masso head kicks her and then takes her back and submits her, which was like, damn, you couldn't stop the head kick. You know it's coming. That's her one move. So, nah, man, I don't think that's going to happen here. I think Tracy Cortez is pretty damn solid when it comes to the wrestling. There's very, very few women in the UFC who have very good caliber wrestling like Tracy Cortez. She trains with our Lord and Savior Triple C, Henry Cejudo. Like they're on Instagram all the time training with each other. I think she might even be taller than him. So it's there's something there. The only thing I have against Tracy Cortez is that her tattoo on her arm is god awful. I think it's a picture of her brother wearing a Dodgers hat. And as much as I'm a huge Dodgers fan, I don't really like looking at it. She's pretty hot, she has a nice body. But I got Cortez to win this one by decision. I think she's just going to grapple the hell out of Justine Key. She's going to outposition her. Justine's a good striker. She's pretty solid overall. At this point, though, she's what, 33 years old. She's going to be at a significant disadvantage on the ground. Like literally, she got the shit squeezed out of her by Felice Herrig, and Felice Herrig's not the best fighter in the UFC. I think Cortez is going to just put a wrestling clinic on her and dominate her to a decision win. I'm actually probably going to put a bet on this one because this is the first fight that I'm thinking, wow, this is pretty cut and dry. I don't think Tracy's going to get hurt. I think she's just going to grapple, grapple, grapple.
Sorry, I was just actually looking at the fight that I'm actually looking forward to most on this card. There for a minute, I forgot we were talking about women's MMA. Yeah, yep, this fight is certainly on the card. There's really not much to say more than that. Um, yeah, Tracy Cortez is going to decision this. Justine Kish, just um, I would say she's probably the Luis Pena of this division. Um, yeah, I'm not a fan of either. Tracy Cortez has what it takes to win this by decision. She has the reach. Apparently, they're both the same height. And she's coming down in weight. But for sure, that 6 year age difference, man, is going to show because Justine Kish's submission loss by Sabina Mazo, Jesus, that looked horrible. She looked like she didn't know, you know. She kind of she looked the way she looked in the octagon is the way I kind of look on a Saturday morning sometimes when I'm like, oh man, I'm late for work. Where the hell am I? Who am I? Yeah, it just she looked out of place. I'm pretty sure in whatever league she was fighting in Russia before, she was probably top 10 there. But in the UFC, in these women's divisions, I think this is just the fight that they set up. They do. The UFC does this sometimes, where they sneakingly try to feed these contenders, a la Bellator and boxing and whatnot. And I think this is one of those fights for Tracy Cortez. So I think she's going to end up with a W, and on to the next higher ranked fighter. So yeah, Tracy Cortez by decision.
And before we begin the main card, I'd like to ask you guys please like, share, subscribe, comment if you can. Really helps us out. We're trying to get up to 60 subscribers. That'd be awesome. But to break down the main card, and Tapology might have this out of order, but it says Drakkar Close versus Jeremy Stevens is going to open up the main card. But I think Sherdog has it as the co-main. But screw it. We've got Drakkar Close versus Lil Heaven, Jeremy Stevens. He's moving back up to lightweight. Currently, the odds are minus 137 for Stevens, plus 110 for Close, and oh my, the train's passing by. But yeah, fascinating fight because Stevens is moving up in weight. He has not won a fight in quite a long time. He's on a pretty bad skid from featherweight. Got knocked out by Calvin Cater. He got decision by Yair Rodriguez. He got clawed in the eye by Yair Rodriguez in Mexico. As a beat his ass, and Jose Aldo knocked him out. And the Jose Aldo knockout was, man, before then that was like, oh, Jeremy Stevens might be making a run at featherweight. He's finally been putting things together, and then boom, one body shot later, he's back to his old skiddy ways. As for Drakkar Close, I do not like Drakkar Close. I don't know what it is about Drakkar Close. I've never been a fan. He got demolished by Beneil Dariush, and if I remember correctly, Beneil had him in a choke, standing rear naked choke, and I think he might have been like joint manipulating his fingers so he wouldn't get submitted. So it's kind of a scumbaggy thing, but it is what it is. The thing about Drakkar Close is that he's pretty damn stocky. He's kind of built like a fire hydrant with legs and arms, and he has a pretty solid low calf kick, and he used that to beat a lot of dudes. Uh, he's beaten some really good guys in that division, and I think he's an underdog primarily because of that knockout loss to Beneil Dariush. And honestly, Jeremy Stevens, his last fight with Calvin Cater, he looked pretty solid. Like he was very aggressive, he was landing very well, but he eventually got caught. The thing about Drakkar Close is that he's a wrestler. So I think he's going to be able to, you know, I guess hold Jeremy up against the cage, gonna land the low calf kick. Honestly, I would love to see Jeremy Stevens knock out Drakkar Close, but I do think Drakkar Close is going to win this one by decision. He's going to make it boring. He's going to attack the calves. He's going to take down Jeremy Stevens. Jeremy Stevens is a very dynamic guy. He's very explosive. When he tries to, defend takedowns, he tries to be explosive. When he's on the ground, he tries to pop back up. And I think Drakkar Close's overall cardio is just going to break Jeremy Stevens, and it's going to be a pretty clear 29-28 decision for Drakkar Close.
Yeah, I think this fight is going to be very Drakkar close, closer than people think. I think it's gonna. I think Drakkar is gonna win 29-28. But that's just due to the fact that Jeremy Stevens. I think he's on his way out. Man. He is lost, and it isn't just this skid that I think is indicative of his level. His MMA. His fight IQ and his actual, where he stands among great fighters, because he doesn't stand among great fighters. He had this skid. He had a skid back in 2016, 2017, where he lost to Frankie Edgar, Renato Moicano. He's lost to Holloway. He's lost. He lost to pre-championship contender Charles Oliveira. He lost to Cub Swanson back in 2014. He lost to Eve Edwards back in 2012. Shout out to anybody who remembers who Eve Edwards is. He lost. Yeah, he lost to Cowboy Cerrone back in 2012 when he was still contender. He lost to Anthony Pettis in 2011. He lost to Melvin Guillard 11 years ago. He lost to Gleison Tebow back in 2019. Jesus, this guy has been
Keep
in the
going, keep
UFC.
going. He lost to
Okay.
someone else who was really
He lost to Joe Lozon. He lost to Spencer Fisher. He lost to Din Thomas.
there you go.
Okay, does anybody know who Din Thomas is? If you know who Din Thomas is, shout out. He lost to Din Thomas back in 2007. And he lost to one more guy. If you guys know who Chris Mickey is, super shout out to you guys because I have no idea who he is. If you know who he is, then cool. But anyway, this guy has been fighting since 2000, or fighting professionally, I should say, since 2005, and he's been with the UFC since 2007. Why he's been with the UFC since 2007? Because he's alternated wins and losses, and he is fairly exciting. But Jesus, he is not top 10, top 15 material. I mean, he's tough. He'll give anybody a run for their money. But I don't know, man. I don't think he can. He's no longer. I don't think. I don't think he'll no longer be able to put together two solid wins, two convincing wins, wins that don't wins. And by that I mean like a solid 30-27 domination of somebody, um, or a knockout, or uh, submission. Least of all, unless they start matching them up with UFC newcomers. So yeah, I mean, unless they're gonna set this guy as the new journeyman, Brooklyn Brawler type guy. I think this. I don't know how many fights he has left on his contract, but depending on how badly he loses here, this might be his last fight. That isn't to say I'm very high in Drakkar Klose, especially after the performance he put up against Beneil Dariush. I'm a fan of Beneil. I think he's probably the most underestimated, under the radar guy in the in the lightweight division. I like his style of fighting. I like the fact that he doesn't just cruise to a win. He tries to go for. He's very good on the ground. He's very aggressive, and he won't sit on his laurels. He won't, just because he's winning a fight, he won't just cruise in the third round or whatever like a lot of these guys do. He brings it every single minute he's in the cage, and I respect that. Unlike Drakkar Klose, man, yeah, he's put together a few wins, but yeah, that was a pretty kind of dirty thing he did with Beneil, with his fingers and such. And yeah, that reminds me of this other guy who used to be in the UFC, Gilbert Ivel, dirty fighter. Yeah, so I think this guy's like set to be, the Gilbert Ivel of this division, which is not good. Gilbert Ivel. He has some highlights, but man, that guy's a scumbag too. So I'll reluctantly take Drakkar Klose on the over, because I don't think. I think Jeremy Stevens is done. I don't think he has any much more left for the UFC. I think he's probably going to be, another Bellator soon to be contender, unless he goes into bare knuckle fighting and he becomes a champion there or something. I don't know.
That actually would be really awesome to see, dude. That'd be really cool.
Yeah, if anything, I think he'd be. I don't know how many of you caught the last bare knuckle event where they were showcasing Paige Van Zandt. Anyway, it was either I don't know if it was I don't recall if it was a co-main event, but they had Chris Lieben on there.
Oh,
And Chris Lieben, he's had his problems over the years, but he went in there and showed, why they call him the what is it, the two-face crippler, the cross-face crippler,
just the
something.
crippler.
I don't know, or just the crippler. But anyway, he showed, he showed an inkling of the Chris Lieben of old. I think one of Chris Lieben's old, one of my favorite Chris Lieben fights by far was, which includes the walkout, the stare down, and the whole bit, was against Wanderlei Silva. Because I wasn't excited, because to me, the hype, at least personally, the hype around that was bigger than the hype around, Wanderlei Silva versus Chuck. I was going to say Chuck Silva. What's that guy's name? Chuck Barreto? Chuck something?
Chuck Liddell?
Chuck Liddell. I can remember that guy's last name for the life of me.
Chuck Liddell. For
I don't know.
UFC legend Chuck Liddell?
Yeah, that guy.
Yeah.
Was bigger than the hype around that, even though that event was like huge. You know what I mean? I think the fight against Chris Lieben was even bigger because, everybody underestimated Chris, and Chris went out there and showed the axe murderer he showed him what he's all about, and he just caught him on the button. That was a fantastic fight. I still remember it was like in 2012, somewhere
Something like
around
that,
there.
yeah. I remember the lime green, like, Bud Light lime logo, and I just
Yeah,
remember him getting him in that hockey position, that those uppercuts, man, they were dirty, man.
yeah, yeah, man. That's the kind of Chris Lieben that showed up in I guess what was his last professional fight in bare knuckle fighting. Not just
Mhm.
in bare knuckle fighting, but his last professional fight period. And that kind of brought flashbacks to me of the Chris Lieben of old, like against Vanderlei Silva and such, which is, I think, um, his is it coup de grace or something? His masterpiece, so to speak. So whenever you show someone highlights of um, Chris Lieben in his prime, I would show him that fight in its entirety. That was a fantastic fight.
So
But anyway,
confirmed, Jeremy Stevens going to bare knuckle.
I think so. I think he'll be going to bare knuckle. I don't know if he'll go to Bellator because I don't know if he wants to train MMA any longer. I think he just likes to throw down anyway. So I figured bare knuckle they can use another name. Like, oh hey, we're bringing over former UFC fighter Jeremy Stevens, and he'll have some fights lined up for him there, and maybe he'll be bare knuckle champion, and he'll see more success than he ever saw in the UFC because nobody's going to try to take him down or anything. So yeah, so Jeremy Stevens has a pretty bright future ahead of him, but it will not include this fight.
Moving on to the next fight at heavyweight. Fight pisses me off because it's like, why does one of these guys have to lose? Alexander King Kong Romanov versus El Guapo Juan Espino. Uh, 10-1 versus 13-0. The one loss between these two is to Juan Espino. I had to get there's not a lot of pictures of his loss. You have to actually go watch the video, and he got wrecked, man. He got wrecked by I can't remember the guy's name who knocked him
Vitaly
out. Yeah, yeah,
Minakov.
yeah. Minikov knocked him out. Like you just saw the inexperience at that time for Juan Espino. Like his striking was like, oh dear, like oh dear, and he was wearing a tank top too, which I thought was hilarious, or a compression shirt. But man, this is a good matchup between these two guys. They're both undefeated in the UFC. Alexander Romanov, man, he is a suplex machine. I love watching this guy. And he does resemble King Kong when he's on top of you, the way he like Donkey Kongs you with his fist, his hammer fist. I like watching this guy and his chokes, man. That forearm choke. Like not many people can get that, but this guy's just so strong and big and I guess meaty that he can pull that off. And for Juan Espino, his last fight, he got Jeff Hughes in a scarf hold choke. So they're really good wrestlers. The biggest thing that's like an issue for me that's glaring to me is that Juan Espino's 40 years old. They're roughly the same, except for a 5-inch reach advantage for Espino. And he's 1 inch taller as well. Currently, the odds are, let's see, plus 110 for Espino, minus 137 for Romanov. And I'll be 100% honest with you guys. The narrative really is Juan Espino's an older guy. They're both wrestlers. The younger guy usually wins in those situations, right? Like, but I don't know. I don't know which way to go with this one. It's a really close fight for me. Maybe because I'm biased, I kind of really like Juan Espino. I like that idea of this older guy, very reminiscent of Randy Couture and Daniel Cormier, these wrestlers that can come in here and just beat up the younger dudes. So I kind of like that, but it's really hard to go against the Moldovan at this point, especially Romanov. I like seeing Romanov. So this is a good test for him because this is more than likely the best fighter that he's fought currently because the guys he's fought in the UFC have not really been, you know, much of a challenge other than I guess Marcos Rogerio de Lima put up a bit of a fight where I was a little concerned, but once it got to the ground, it was over for for De Lima. He went out with that forearm choke, and similar to Rocky Martinez, he got tossed around the octagon. He might have gotten some frequent flyer points on those slams. So it's it's going to be close. I don't think Romanov will be able to ragdoll Espino the way he does. So it might potentially just be a striking battle. And with that reach advantage for Espino, that could be the honestly, that could be the route to victory. He trains at American Top Team. They should be able to get him a pretty decent game plan. I'm gonna probably go with Espino just because I mean I really like Romanov, and it sucks that one of these guys has to lose so early in this career. But I'm going with a biased pick. I like Espino. He is El Guapo, and it reminds me of Bass Rutten, so I'll go with that. I'll go with El Guapo to win by decision. I think he'll pull it off. I think he'll be, I don't know, he'll just use old man strength and get the decision win.
The best analogy I can come up with for this fight, and this is just to note, this is my fight of the night, the fight I'm looking forward to most this night. I was very high on Alexander Romanov coming into the UFC against his fight against Roque Martinez, who he just ragdolled, and then he's like, "Ask you, just go ahead and submit me." Same thing with Rogerio de Lima. And I was actually pretty high on Espino against Jeff Hughes, coming back, after his long sort of 2-year layoff. And well, what I was saying, the best analogy I can come up with for this fight is going back to my ECW or ECW days, is Taz versus Rhino in ECW. Taz was kind of the smaller, if you don't know who Taz was the suplex machine in ECW, and Rhino was kind of just that. He was kind of like this. Imagine putting SpongeBob SquarePants in what do you call those things? What do you call that thing that Rhino wore?
Singlet.
Spandex. Yeah, a singlet with long hair, and just kind of rushing guys. That's how I see Juan. Juan's like a very stocky guy, as is Romanov. But Romanov, that's his bread and butter. Suplexing the hell out of guys into until he can get into position for a submission. But that's Juan Espino's game. He's a very good submission artist, and he showed that despite his age, he still got it. But I think this is a very tough fight, and I'm like I said, this is a fight that I'm looking forward to most on this card. I think Romanov has his youth, and while he isn't going to be able to ragdoll Juan Espino like he usually does, I think he's going to have enough grappling to get the decision here. I don't think he'll be able to submit Espino just because he is just as big, if probably not, probably bigger. But I think it's that the endurance and cardio of Romanov that's going to give him the slight edge. But anyway, I am looking forward to this, whether it be on the ground or on the feet. And I'm reluctantly taking Romanov because I do like Espino, and I'd like to see Espino succeed as well. Very tough, very tough. But I am giving the slight edge to Romanov here.
Our next matchup at middleweight, we've got a fight between GM3 Gerald Meerschaert and the Butcher Bartosz Fabinski. The odds are currently Fabinski -139, Gerald Meerschaert +110. Honestly, I'm not too thrilled with this matchup. I'm not a fan of Bartosz Fabinski. I think he's kind of boring. He's a grappler. He's a grinder. He'll take you down and grind you out. He did that to Darren Stewart in Cage Warriors / UFC because of COVID. It had to get moved over to Cage Warriors. And you know what? He's been submitted by really good black belts. He got submitted by Michel Prazeres, that little tank of a man, and Andre Muniz by armbar in his last fight. And Andre Muniz is proving to be a pretty solid middleweight at this point. And for Meerschaert, Meerschaert, he's a damn good submission artist as well. People don't want to mess around with him on the ground. And the only downside is his chin is pretty shitty. He got knocked out by Ian Heinisch with an overhand right. And you know what? At this point, Ian Heinisch, he's not possibly UFC caliber. He has to potentially go back to LFA. And Kazmat Chimaev got knocked out with one punch by that guy, a guy who fights at middleweight and welterweight. So his chin is always going to be a liability. But to be honest with you, I'm going to keep this one short. I'm going to go with the dog Meerschaert. I think he finds a way to get the submission. Again, Bartosz Fabinski is primarily a grappler and a wrestler. He'll try to do that. I don't think he'll do that at this point. I think they'll keep it standing. I don't think Bartosz will find that knockout punch for Meerschaert. Meerschaert is an inch taller and he has a longer reach by 2.5 inches. He has a really nice body kick. I can't remember who he knocked out with that kick. He kicked somebody in the stomach. I think it might have been Spicely. I can't remember for sure, but his body kick is pretty solid. I think it's a left body kick. I keep saying body kick. I got Meerschaert to win by body kick via a submission. So he'll kick him into the body and then he'll catch the leg and he'll get him in a guillotine. So I've got Meerschaert to win by second round submission.
I don't have too much to add to this fight, just because I think Meerschaert is garbage and Trubisky isn't worth me really thinking once or twice about him. I'll go with the over, and I'll go with Fabinski just because Meerschaert is garbage. What I would like to do is elaborate a bit more on Alexander Romanov. When I said that he's like Taz, what I meant was he isn't just a suplex machine. This guy is, does have great ground and pound, and he actually has pretty good stand up. I think it's just that the fact that he prefers to ragdoll guys for some reason that must, his eyes must roll back in, with pleasure as he's ragdolling guys and suplexing the hell out of them. I guess it just must, um, yeah, he must just be elated. It must be his form of ecstasy. Grappling is his drug, suplexing is his ecstasy. Yes, I think I would actually give Romanov a slight advantage on the feet. I do like Juan Espino's stand up; it's not bad, but I think Romanov is just too much at this point. Being the fact that he's 10 years younger, and every single fight that I've seen of Romanov's, he comes to fight. He just does not stop from bell to bell. He does tend to get submissions and whatnot, but if he has to go the full rounds, he just keeps going. He reminds me of a Sea Level Kane to a certain extent. Sea Level Kane never suplexed the hell out of guys, but he just had nonstop cardio. And for a guy this big to have cardio like that, that's insane.
So
And I think
your pick for Meerschaert and Fabinski is Alexander Romanov.
yes, I think this is worth more talking about this fight than Meerschaert. I don't like that guy. He's yeah. Anyway,
Well, let's move
but yeah,
on to the main event.
actually, I can talk. We can skip the main event, and I can keep talking about. I think this should be the main event. But no, okay, we can talk about it.
That's funny. We've got on our main event at middleweight, Robert the Reaper Whittaker versus Kelvin Tum Tum Gastelum. And the odds currently have it at plus 200 for Gastelum and minus 260 for Whittaker. And frankly, the odds may be a little inflated, but I understand it. Kelvin Gastelum has not looked his greatest. He did just beat a guy who I mentioned does not belong in the UFC in Ian Heinisch. Ian Heinisch looked awful in that fight. Like he did not belong. And honestly, he made Kelvin Gastelum look like a world beater again, which makes me kind of curious. Like, is Kelvin Gastelum that guy again? Like, did he just happen to go through a rough patch where he fought Israel Adesanya, Darren Till to a split decision, and Jack Hermanson? Jack Hermanson's really good at getting guys in submissions, right? Like he has his joke routine, but he got him in a heel hook. And, maybe that's not the worst loss in the world. And for Robert Whittaker, his loss again to Adesanya, which was a year and a half ago, it may have kind of lit a fire under him because he has been looking really good ever since then. He beat Darren Till in a pretty back and forth striking affair where he controlled the fight after a couple rounds. I think he got dropped in the first or whatnot, and he just came back and looked dominant. And then he broke Jared Cannonier's arm with his kicks. And it's an interesting fight because they were supposed to fight a couple years ago for the title, and then that's when Israel stepped in, fought Gastelum in like a month later, and that's where Izzy kind of took off. And it could have been Kelvin Gastelum's night that night. I actually think he would have beat Robert Whittaker that night because the Gastelum from that era looked so damn crisp and clean. That Whittaker, or not Whittaker, that Gastelum that fought Adesanya would have knocked out Robert Whittaker, in my opinion. But I think that time has passed because Whittaker took his ass whooping from Adesanya, and I think he might have tightened up his defense quite a bit. Like his striking is, and it's good. Like he implements the wrestling, and I know Kelvin is the wrestler between these two, and frankly, he might even be the faster guy. But I think Robert Whittaker, I think his overall game has tremendously improved since his last loss to Adesanya. Like he's just so fluid. His kicks, he's so damn good. And with Kelvin Gastelum, I can't really trust him. I like Kelvin. We met him in Chicago. Really, really nice guy. Like I want him to win. Like deep down, like I want Kelvin to win. I want him to be champ because I told him, "Good luck in your next title fight, champ," and hoping he would win. I've got a soft spot for Kelvin, just like Kelvin has many soft spots on his belly. But I had to go with Robert Whittaker to win this one by decision. I think it's going to be a good fight. I think Kelvin will hurt Robert Whittaker, but overall, I think Robert's just going to be the better striker in there. He's going to be able to defend the takedowns, keep the fight at his range, and then he'll pull off the decision win. But man, I'm really rooting for Kelvin. I'm a big fan of his.
So what you're saying is you wanted your words of encouragement to be what put Kelvin over the top and actually made him champion,
Yeah,
and then you wanted him to recognize you in his press conference
absolutely, 100%. He would have been
or
like
his congratulatory speech.
that guy with the stupid sunglasses. Like I gave him a picture of Vitor that he knocked out Vitor to sign. He's like, "Oh wow, this is really nice," and I'm like, "Oh, thanks, Kelvin." You guy could dream, but no, like he was a really nice guy.
Yeah, Kelvin was a nice guy, and as much as we make fun of him being a little pudgy for welterweight now, because he takes Taco Tuesday to the extreme now. He Taco Tuesday now bleeds over into Wednesday and Thursday, unfortunately, in the Gastelum household. So welterweight is, a far off dream now. Um, Kelvin, as in the previous breakdown, when he fought, but also may have farted in the against Ian Heinich. Ian, there's another reason why I don't like Ian Heinich or Gerald Meerschaert. There's this guy out there that every other word seems to be Ian Heinich or Gerald Meerschaert. He's like a Heinich and Meerschaert nut hugger. Anyway, that kind of gets on my nerves. But besides that, Ian Heinich or Meerschaert don't belong in the UFC. But that being said, in the previous breakdown, prior to that fight, I mentioned that Kelvin Gastelum had gotten away from his wrestling, but he showed against low-level Heinich that he still had some wrestling, credential left. He brought some of that back, and that led to his victory. But that kind of half-hearted performance is not going to cut it um, against Rob. Whittaker is possibly the best, just straight kind of boxer in that division, I think. While Adesanya is the best, striker, kickboxer, and such in that division, I think Whittaker still gives him a run for his money. As long as he's patient Whittaker. If he's patient Whittaker, he doesn't get over emotional and get knocked out again by Adesanya. So I think that's a new thing we've seen post losing his fight against Adesanya, losing his belt and such. He's gotten back to form. Um, but then again, Rob Whittaker is a decision machine. While yes, he will dominate guys, and in his last fight he did break what's his name's Cannonier's arm. He did decision the hell out of him. He didn't finish him or anything. So that's kind of one thing I am, not really look. That I should say that's one thing that I don't look forward to in Whittaker's fights, and is him just decisioning the hell out of guys, not going in for the kill. Gastelum on the flip side, um, he does train at King's MMA, and I don't know if he's listening or if somebody told him, from the last podcast that his wrestling is his bread and butter. If he wants to be successful with the striking, he has to set up the wrestling and the grappling, because you have to have your opponent fixated on defending that grappling, so that it distracts them and you can have your way with them, and in the striking aspect and vice versa. So I think that's, if Gastelum is going to be successful, and emerge victorious in this fight, he is going to have to implement a lot more of his wrestling here. Even though Rob he does have great takedown defense. His level of aggressiveness has always been pretty up there. He just let, I think his downfall during the Adesanya fight was just he just let his emotions get the best of him. He let Adesanya get into his head. He let the whole thing where everybody was pretty high on Adesanya get into his head as well. But I don't think that'll be the case here. I don't think he's going to let, he's a fairly um, even tempered guy. I think he doesn't really, allow things to get to him, but I think he did then. And I think he learned from that mistake. Um, so I think he's going to be ready for whatever Gastelum brings. So unfortunately, if Gastelum doesn't bring in 1,000% of whatever he's going to do, Whittaker, I should say, is going to piece them up for 5 rounds, and he's going to look kind of like how he looked after the Adesanya fight, but he's going to have less output, versus Whittaker. I don't know, maybe Whittaker will break his arm or something while he's trying to, during the process of blocking him or something. But back to the Romanov fight, uh, which again I'm arguing to be the actual main event of this card. Yeah, I am going to see. I would have liked to have seen Juan Espino. I would have liked to have seen this matchup down the line. I would have seen these guys. I would have liked to have seen. I think they matched them up a little too early, in my opinion. I think they could have had two potential stars in the. That is to say, it's not like this is gonna be Juan Espino's retirement fight or anything. But I would argue that they should have matched them up down the line. When these guys were bigger names. Not to say that they aren't, talented now, but I would have liked to have seen them build them up a little bit more, and have these guys have matched up, down the line, at least in a fight night or something, with a solid card behind them. Because the heavyweight division, aside from Ngannou, a lot of these guys are, going downhill. They got to start building up the heavyweight division. So I think they messed up here. Um, so yeah. So Robert Whittaker by decision, reluctantly. I think he's going to win at least. He's going to win at least three of these rounds. I don't know if Gastelum is going to have some sort of comeback, because Whittaker is relentless when he wants to be, with that jab, and some of his combinations. So yeah, so Whittaker by decision.
Well, those have been our picks for UFC Fight Night, Whittaker versus Gastelum. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, leave a comment. We really appreciate the comments, even those that say that we're a shit show. They're fun. They're funny. We appreciate that really much, though. Any comment, we don't care. But yeah, again, those have been our picks. Johnny and Jose, Tiger Bomb MMA, and we'll catch you at the next fight.